Let's go somewhere quiet tonight, somewhere where the air smells of pine and cold water and wood smoke, somewhere the sky is very, very large. Tonight, we are going camping, not the rushed kind, not the kind where you arrive in the dark and struggle with 10 poles by torchlight and wake up cold and wonder why you came. Tonight is the other kind, the kind where everything goes gently, where there is no schedule, no phone signal worth caring about, no one waiting for anything from you. Tonight, you have an entire evening and an entire night. You have a good sleeping bag and a camp chair and a sky that, when the time comes, will absolutely fill itself with stars. There's nothing you need to do except be here. So let's settle in. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Take one breath, a slow breath in through your nose. Count 4 beats if you like, and release it steadily without hurry. Good. You are already on your way. The road that leads to the campsite is not on any major map. You know it because someone once wrote it down for you on a scrap of paper, a sequence of turns that made no sense at the time, but which, once you had driven them once, settled permanently into your body like a song you have had always known. Turn left at the old barn, over the cattle grid, past the stand of silver birches. Turn right where the fence post leans. The last hour of the drive is the best part. The road narrows gently, gradually, almost apologetically, as though it is aware that it is leading somewhere that does not particularly want to be found by the kind of people who needs wide roads. The verges grow up on both sides, tall grass first, then bracken, then stretches where gorge pushes right up to the tarmac edge, yellow flowers catching the late afternoon light like something lit from within. You have the window down, not all the way. The speed of the car makes it impractical, but down enough that the air coming in is cool on your forearm where it rests against the door. The air that has that particular quality that air only has in the countryside at this time of year and this time of day, warm beneath, cool on top, carrying a faint green smell that is not any single plant but all of them together, the whole living mass of the landscape breathing out. The radio is off. You haven't noticed. Whatever was playing some time ago, 40 minutes ago, an hour, simply faded out of relevance as the scenery changed. And at some point, you reach forward and turn the dial without thinking about it, the way you might close a door that was letting in a draught. Now, there's just the sound of the road under the tires, a low hiss on the smooth patches, a brief crunch where gravel has accumulated on the verge and been dragged onto the tarmac by farm vehicles. The occasional crack of a small stick. You pass through a small village, 2 dozen houses, a post office that also sells ice cream in the summer, though it is probably closed now, a church with a square tower and a yew tree in a churchyard so old and wide that it would take 3 or 4 people, arms outstretched, to circle its trunk. You pass a pub. The sign swings very slightly in the breeze, a painted fish on a blue background, And for a moment, you registered that you could stop, that there would probably be a fire lit inside already at this hour, that someone behind the bar might know your order if you have been here before. But you keep driving because where you are going is better. Past the village, the road dips into a shallow valley and crosses a stone bridge over a river you cannot see properly but can hear. A quick, bright burbling beneath the stone, and then climbs again out on the other side through a tunnel of trees so dense that the light drops suddenly, as though someone has dimmed the switch, and the air temperature falls a few degrees in an instant. Then the trees open, and there it is, the hillside rising ahead of you, covered in heather that at this time of year has gone, that particular deep russet purple that seemed to glow even when the sky is flat. The sky above it, enormous. The kind of sky that you would forget is possible when you have been living in towns. The kind that makes you understand in your body, not just your mind, that you are on the surface, a very large sphere floating in a great deal of open space. There are a few clouds still up there, long thin ones, catching the orange and pink of the sun that is already descending toward the hills to the west. But most of the sky is clear, and in the east, where the sky is deepening toward a darker blue, you can already see, if you look carefully, if you give your eyes a moment, the faintest suggestion of the first stars. They're not really there yet, or perhaps they are, and the sky is just not dark enough to show them properly. It doesn't matter. By the time you need them, they will be ready. You take the last turn, the one that isn't really a turn but a gateway, a gap in a dry stone wall with a 5-bar gate propped open, through which a rough track leads into a field, and you slow the car to a crawl, feeling the track's irregularities through the steering wheel, the slow bump and lean over the tussocks. At the far edge of the field, where the slant starts to rise and the heater begins in earnest, there's a flat area of close cropped grass, used, it seemed, just enough to keep it clear, not so much that it is worn. This is where you stop. You turn off the engine. The silence, when it comes, is not silence. It is full of small sounds, all of them gentle. The tick of the engine cooling, a bird somewhere in the hedge behind you, going through what sounds like a private to do list in short, empathetic phrases. Somewhere further off, a crow, but underneath all of it, stillness. You sit for a moment before getting out. Just sit, hands in your lap, looking at the field and the hillside and the sky. There's a particular feeling you get in the first moments after arriving somewhere like this, a kind of decompression, as though something you had been holding very tightly for a long time has been given permission to loosen. It doesn't happen all at once. It takes a few minutes. You just let it happen. The light is turning now. The pink is deepening at the horizon. The blue overhead is a shade darker than it was when you turned off the road. You open the car door. The air comes in cool, immediate, and it smells of grass and heather and something fungal and rich from the soil beneath the field, and something else, wood smoke already from somewhere. Not your fire. There's not your fire yet. perhaps from the farmhouse a mile or more away, or perhaps just something carried a long distance on the wind. You step out. The ground beneath your boots is firm and springy, good, well drained turf that has been rained on recently enough to be soft, dry, long enough to be comfortable. You walk a slow circle around the flat area, the way people do when they are deciding where to put a tent, even when they already know roughly where it will go. You are assessing the slight slope here. You want to sleep where your head uphill, or at least with your body level. The wind direction, you hold up a hand, feel the breeze, steady, coming from the northwest, which puts the stone wall behind you, which is good, which will take the edge off it, picks up at the night. You choose your spot. The tent goes up with the quiet efficiency of something done many times. You have done this in strong winds, in rain, in failing light, once in a mild state of exhaustion that made every step feel choreographed. Tonight, none of those things are present, and the tent practically assembles itself, pulls through the sleeves, clips clicking into place with small, satisfying snaps, the fly sheet billowing briefly as you shake it out and then settling into position as you peg it down. You walk around it slowly, pulling each guy line taut, pressing each peg more firmly into the turf with the heel of your boot. The tent is a good shape, low to the ground but roomy inside, with the inners separated from the fly so that condensation wouldn't be a problem. You've slept in tents like this in temperatures well below what tonight will bring, and you've been comfortable. Tonight will be easy. The sleeping bag goes in first, spread out so it can start lofting. A down bag, the kind that needs a few minutes to reach its full volume after being compressed in its full stuff sack. Then the sleeping mat, already self inflating, that you carry rolled and clipped to the outside of your pack, and which now fills itself slowly, becoming firm and even on its own time. You prop the small lantern on the tent's interior shelf, a little hook designed precisely for this purpose, neat and considered, the kind of thoughtful detail that makes you trust the people who designed the thing. You turn, you don't turn it on yet. It's not dark enough. Back outside. The camp chair comes out next. The good kind, low and wide and with a deep seat and armrests that are actually at a comfortable height. You unfold it and set it facing west, toward the light that is still pulling on the horizon, a diffuse golden orange that has not yet resolved into the proper sunset but is beginning to suggest it. There is a fire ring already here, a circle of stones, blackened on their inner faces, left by other campers in other seasons, a quiet kind of community resource. You collect wood without having to go far. The stone wall along the far edge of the field has its base a long accumulated drift of dead wood, branches that have blown down from the trees beyond and has been caught by the wall and slow dried out there. Perfect. You make 3 trips, carrying an armful each time, building a modest pile beside the fire ring. Not too much. You don't need a bonfire. You need a fire you can sit beside and think beside. A fire that will burn down to coals by the time you're ready and to sleep, which you can cover with a piece of flat stone if needed. You build it carefully, not with performance. No one is watching. but with genuine attention to the task. A small nest of dry grass and birch bark at the center, thin twigs arranged in a loose lattice above it, leaving space for the air to move through. Then slightly thicker sticks. Then the first of the proper pieces of wood, two of them propped against each other like the sides of a narrow arch. A match. The first one doesn't take. You pull the head more than you strike it, and it falls into the grass unlit. The second one catches with a bright, immediate snap, and you cup your hands around it and bring it to the tinder, holding it steady. And for a moment, nothing happens. And then the bark catches, and then the dry grass, and a small tight flame appears, yellow and energetic, and begins its work. You stay crouched, watching. The fire needs you for a minute or two, needs you to be nearby and attentive in case it needs help. A gentle breath along the base, a small adjustment of a twig. But it is going well. The small sticks are taking, the heat is building. When the larger pieces catch, and they do catch, one at a time, not dramatically, just a deepening and a spreading of the orange, you lean back on your heels and watch for a moment more, then stand. A fire. There's something in humans that responds to a fire with something deeper than thought, older than language, a kind of settling, a recognition that this is correct. This is what an evening should look like. This is fine. You go back to the car for the cooking things. The small gas stove sits on the flat lid of the cooler box, which makes a perfectly adequate table. You set the pot, a single well seasoned pot that has been on many trips and bears the small marks of all of them, directly on the burner and light on the igniter. A quick clink and a ring of blue flame appears, modest and efficient. Tonight's dinner is simple. That is not a disappointment. It is a deliberate choice. One of the things you have learned over many years of camping, that simple food cooked outdoors tastes better than complicated food cooked indoors most of the time, and that the simplicity is part of the flavor. You have learned that this in the same way you learn many things worth knowing by first trying the complicated version, spending a long evening with a camping cookbook and too many ingredients in a bag that leaked olive oil over everything, and arriving at the simple version through the natural process of letting go of what needn't need to be there. Onions go in first. They let go in a little oil, not olive oil tonight, which smokes too readily at this temperature, but a neutral oil in a small amount that costs almost nothing and takes up almost no space in a pack. The onion starts to soften and become translucent, and the smell rises from them and mingles with the wood smoke from the fire a few feet away and with the cool evening air coming off the hillside. And the combination is something that cannot be recreated in a kitchen because it is partly not the food at all, but the context, the open sky, the cooling light, the fact that you are here, garlic, two cloves, crushed with the blade of the knife against the lid of the cooler box and then roughly chopped, not minced, not needed to be minced. They go in with the onions, sizzling, filling the small local air around the stove with a smell so immediate and good that you find yourself breathing more deeply just to have more of it. then tinned tomatoes, poured in with a sound like a slow rain, the liquid hissing briefly against the hot base of the pot before the temperature drops, and the whole thing settles into a steady, purposeful simmer. Salt, a pinch of dried herbs, something mixed, something that smells slightly of summer kitchens and Mediterranean holidays, and a kind of cooking that believes in flavor without complication. You leave it to cook. This is the part you like. The part where you don't have to do anything except be the same place as the food while it sorts itself out. You go and sit in the camp chair with a mug of something warm. Tea, just tea, nothing special. A bag you dropped in before the water has quite finished boiling because you are not on ceremony here. And you look at the sky. The sunset is happening properly now. The colors are more complex than they were an hour ago. What was a simple gradient of blue to orange has organized itself into a distinct bands and layers. There is a strip deep of bruised red right at the horizon, compressed and intense. Above it, orange, then amber, then a long band of gold. Then the sky lightens to a pale yellow green, that particular color that only exists for 10 or 15 minutes of each clear evening, and which painters have various names for, but which is essentially just the sky caught between two states, between day and not day, luminous and indeterminate. Above that, the blue deeps again and keeps going, and in the east, where you've turned your head slightly to look, the blue has already made its most of its way to close to violet. You sip the tea. It is hot still, and you take only a small amount. But even that small warmth spreading from your throat to your chest is welcome to the cooling air. The evening temperature has dropped noticeably in the last half an hour. Not cold, not yet, but the kind of cool that makes the fire feel exactly right in its placement, exactly the right distance from the chair to be felt as warmth on your face and hands without being felt as heat. A curlew calls somewhere up on the hillside. That long descending note, a sound so particular to open hills country that it works like a key in a specific lock, unlocking something geographic and emotional at once. If you had grown up here, you would find it moving for that reason. If you came here only occasionally, as you do, you find it moving for the opposite reason, for the contrast it makes with everything else, for the reminder that there are places where curlews still call in the evening and the sky is this color, and the air smells of heather, and the whole world is approximately this quiet. You stir the pot. The sauce has thickened nicely, condensing around the onions and garlic, becoming something with body. You add a cup of water, just a cup, from the bottle you filled at the farmhouse tap on the way in, and dried pasta, breaking the long pieces in half without guilt, the way you do when no one cares about the pasta is watching, because half length pasta fills and fits in a single pot, and a single pot is what you have, and the result will taste the same. The pasta needs about 12 minutes. You replace the lid, slightly ajar to let the steam out, and return to the chair. The first star is visible now. One single point of light, directly overhead, appeared while you were looking at the fire. You notice it with a quiet start of pleasure. Venus, you think. Probably Venus, Given its brightness and the fact that it appeared before any others, it is still very still. It does not flicker like stars do because it is close enough, astronomically speaking, to show as a disk rather than a true point. And a disk does not scintillate, the point does. You watch it for a while, just one star, one point of steady, cold light above the warm world. Then a second appears, much fainter to the northeast. Then a third, almost simultaneous in the south. Then they start coming too quickly to track individually. 5, 10, 15, each one slipping into view as the sky darkens, joining the gathering company overhead with no more fanfare than a light switch in on a distant window. The pasta is ready. You eat from the pot. No need for a bowl. One fewer things to wash. Sitting in the camp chair with the fire to your right and the sky overhead, and the food is exactly as good as simple food made carefully outdoors always is. Deeply satisfying in a way that has nothing to do with sophistication and everything to do with hunger and warmth and the pleasure of eating in the open air. You eat slowly. There is nowhere to be. When you are done, you set the pot aside to cool. Tomorrow morning, you will clean it properly. Tonight, you rest the lid on it and you keep any wildlife from investigating. And you drink the last of the tea, gone tepid now, and watch the sky fill up. You have fed the fire a little, not a lot, 2 or 3 pieces of wood, substantial enough to last a few hours without much attention, not so much that it has become something wild and too large for the evening. It burns at the right size, big enough to see by and to warm the immediate air, small enough that you can look over it at its top to the open sky. The flames have settled into their middle phase now, not the quick, eager phase of a new fire. All sudden shifts and thin yellow tongues reaching up and catching on each new piece of wood with visible excitement, and not yet the slow, deep red of a fire going down to coals. This is the middle phase, steady, amber orange, the kind of fire that breathes rather than burns, that expands and contracts in a gentle rhythm as the wood gives itself up slowly, as the air moves through in small unseen currents. You watch it the way you watch water. There's a small quality of fire and water that is similar. The way the things that make them interesting is precisely their refusal to hold still. The way each moment is irreplicably distant from the last. The way you can watch either of them for a long time without anything happening in a reportable sense, and yet without being bored. You are watching something that is in constant flux and yet deeply predictable. You know the fire will burn down. You know the water will flow on. The pleasure is not in surprise. The pleasure is in witnessing. The wood shifts slightly as one piece loses integrity and settles against the others. A small shower of sparks rises and goes out in the air above, each one a brief arc of orange light that fades and disappears before it reaches the darkness. Wood smoke curls up in a thin column, bending slightly in an almost absent breeze, dispersing into the sky. You breathe in wood smoke, heather from the hillside, grass very faintly, cold air coming down from higher ground, and underneath it all, present but not overwhelming, the mineral smell of the soil itself, ancient and unperfumed. The smell of a place that has been a place for a very long time and does not need to advertise itself. The sky above you, is becoming extraordinary. There is a phenomenon that dark sky enthusiasts know well and that most city dwellers have never experienced at all. The sky after full dark in a place with no light pollution. It is not simply that there are more stars, it is that the sky itself changes character. It becomes a thing with depth, not a flat ceiling scattered with lights, but a layered three dimensional entity. The near stars and the far stars and the impossible distances between them all simultaneously visible, all simultaneously present. The Milky Way is beginning to show that band of faint, diffuse light arcing overhead. You've seen it in photographs, rendered in long exposure images that made it look dramatic and almost fluorescent. In real life, it is softer than that. It is not a bright light. It is more like a memory of light, or light seen through gaze, a suggestion of vastness rather than a proclamation of it. But once your eyes have found it, once they have adjusted to the scale of what you're looking at, the effect, there's no other word, humbling. What you are seeing when you look at the Milky Way is the interior of the galaxy from within it. You're seeing in one direction toward the galactic center, the accumulated light of perhaps 100 billion stars too far away to distinguish individually. You are on one of the outer spiral arms, looking inward. Everything you see, the whole sweep of it, is only a fraction of the whole. The rest wraps around behind you, below the horizon, below your feet, impossible to see because the earth is in the way. It is very hard to hold this thought and remain tense about anything. You lean back in the chair. The chair is designed for exactly this posture, for the kind of backward lean that you let yourself see the sky without craning your neck. Someone thought carefully about this when they designed it. Probably someone who had spent evenings doing exactly what you are doing now and have ended the evening with a stiff neck and had decided to solve the problem. Your neck is not stiff, your shoulders are not raised. The fire is warm on the side of your face nearest to it. The chair holds you exactly. A shooting star, brief, gone before you could say the words. A quick slash of white light from the northwest to the southeast, lasting perhaps a second, leaving a faint after image on the inside of your eye that persists for a moment and then fades. A piece of rock no larger than a grain of sand, entering the atmosphere at many kilometers per second and converting all of its kinetic energy into light and heat in the space of 1 second, becoming nothing more but light and then nothing at all. The same rock that has been floating in the dark between the orbits of planets for longer than the Earth had had oceans. You do not make a wish, or perhaps you do, something wordless, not quite a thought, more like an exhale. The fire settles again. You are aware of the sound of the night, not silence, as we said, never truly silence anywhere that life is present, but a sound that is composed entirely of things that had no opinion about you. The wind through the heather, which is not quite a whisper, but not quite a hiss, but something between the two, very fine, very continuous. An owl from the trees beyond the stone wall, a tawny owl, the sound that people most reliably mean when they say owls. The two noted tremolo, one long note and one slightly shorter, repeated at measured intervals. Insects, a distant river. If you listen carefully enough, that very faint, very low moving sound beneath everything else. You are part of this soundscape without contributing to it. Your breathing is too quiet to matter. Your heartbeat, you are aware for it for a moment, just briefly, the way you sometimes are in the very quiet places is slower than usual. Everything is slower than usual. This is what rest actually feels like. Not the absence of stimulation, not the removal of demands. Those things help, yes, but the real rest is something active. It is the positive presence of something that let the nervous system remember that it is okay, that this is one of the states it is capable of, that the other state, the alert, the vigilant, the processing, is not the only state and it does not need to be permanent. The fire tells you this, the sky tells you this, the owl and the wind and the smell of the night tells you this. You are allowed to rest. The hillside behind you has a long history that you will never entirely know. You can piece together parts of it. The heather you can see by firelight, the dark shapes of it, the rough texture of the moorland. It is not naturally here, or rather, the heather is natural in the sense that nothing introduced it and nothing maintains it artificially. But the conditions that allow heather to dominate were largely created by people over a very long time. Before people arrived in large numbers, before the trees were cleared for pasture and later for grazing sheep and managed grouse more, this hillside would have been wooded, birch, rowan, perhaps oak on the lower slopes, the natural forest that once covered much of the upland. Heather, the botanists say, requires open land management and the periodic burning to dominate the way it does here. Take away the management and the grazing and the burning, and within a generation or two, the trees will begin to return. But people have been here for a very long time. The dry stone wall behind you, the one that shelters your tent from the northwest wind, is probably not very old, 150 years, perhaps 200. The technique of dry stone walling has barely changed in 2000 years, and the walls from the 18th century and the walls from the Roman period look sufficiently similar that only context and survey tell them apart. Someone built this wall with their hands, choosing each stone for the way it would sit against its neighbors, leaving no mortar because no mortar is needed. And when the geometry is right, building something that has not needed repair in your lifetime or your parents' lifetime and not needing it for your children's. There are older marks here too. If you were here to walk the hillside to in good light, you would find, perhaps a mile toward the summit, a low circular mound with a depression on the center, the signature of a bronze age burial cairn, mostly robbed of its stones by later generations who needed building material and did not attribute significance to the pile of rocks on the hill. Inside what remains, if it's like in the area, there might be the fragments of a cremation burial, a person, of what remained of a person, perhaps 3,500 years ago, in a landscape that looked meaningfully different but was still, in certain ways, this same place, the same stone beneath, the same sky. You are sleeping, or nearly sleeping, in a place that people have been coming to for a very long time. Not tourists, not campers in the modern sense, farmers, shepherds, the people who built the walls and cleared the trees and grazed the animals. But before them, hunters following the deer, and before them, perhaps no one at all, just the hill and the heather and the sky. It is a particular kind of comfort sometimes to think about this, to realize that the place that you are resting had been rested in before, that the fire you have lit is one in a very long series of fires on this hillside, and that every person who had sat beside one of those fires looked up at approximately the same sky and heard approximately the same wind and felt, in one way or another, the same thing. Not the same thoughts necessarily, not the same worries or the same joys, but perhaps the same underlying thing. The thing that happens when you take a person out of compound complexity of their daily life and put them in somewhere simple, somewhere where the inputs are clear and the demands are minimal and the sky is open. That particular quieting. The fire has burned down a little. The orange is deeper, more contained. You feed it once more piece of wood, the last real piece, the kind of piece that will burn for an hour and leave a good bit of coals and watch it catch. The Milky Way is fully visible now. Your eyes have adjusted to the dark well enough that you can see the structure of it, not just the band, but the variations within the band, the brighter concentrations and the dark lanes that cut through it, which are not gaps in the stars, but clouds of dust so dense they block the light of what is behind. The dark lane that running through the center of the Milky Way is called the Great Rift, a lane of obscuring dust that divides the visible band and makes it appear double in places, a fact that generations of sky watchers have interpreted as two separate rivers, two roads, the path of living and the path of the dead, depending on which mythology you were working in. You find the brightest star almost directly overhead, Vega, probably. At this time of year and this latitude, the brightest star in the constellation Lyra, one of the points of the summer triangle. It is very bright, noticeably bright against the rest, the way a single voice stands out from a choir. Light from Vega takes about 25 years to reach your eye. The light you are receiving right now left the star when you were roughly 25 years younger. It has been traveling toward this hillside, toward this particular field, toward your specific eye, since before much of what defines your current life was in place. Whatever you were doing 25 years ago, wherever you were, whoever you were with, whatever you thought your life was going to be, the light that is entering your eye right now has already on its way to you. There is something in this that is neither frightening nor melancholy. It is more like perspective, the useful kind, not the kind that diminishes your life by comparison with cosmic scales, but the kind that loosens your grip on things that have been holding too tightly, the kind that says, you are here, and that is enough, and has always been enough. The air temperature has dropped another few degrees. You are warm enough. You are dressed for this. Layers that seem like too much when you were loading in the car in the afternoon warmth, and which you are now exactly right. The jacket over the fleece, the wool hat folded in your pocket, which you had not yet needed but is 3 minutes away from being needed. Perhaps now, yes, you take it out and pull it on, and the immediate warmth around your ears is disproportionately comforting, the way warmth in a specific vulnerable place always is. Better. The dew is forming. You can feel it in the back of your hands if you let them rest outside the warmth of your pockets. A very fine, very even wetness, not falling from the sky, just there, condensing from the air as the temperature drops. By morning, the grass will be soaked with it. Your tent's outer fly will be beaded with it. If you put your hand out of the tent door first thing, before the sun has had a chance to burn it off, the grass will be cold and wet as though it had rained. A bat comes out, or rather, a bat appears. Bats don't come out as much as materialize. One moment there is no bat, and the next moment there is a bat, and the bat was presumably somewhere along, but now it is here, and it is catching insects above the fire. You can follow it by sight for a moment or two, and then it is gone into the dark beyond the fire's reach, and then it is back, and then it is gone again. An irregular, erratic shape against the sky, moving with that disjointed, almost mechanical quality that bats have. Each wing beat, a sudden fold and unfurl, every change of direction sharp and instantaneous in a way that no bird is capable of. Bats navigate by sound, specifically by the echoes of sounds they produce, ultrasonic clicks and pulses, pitched too high for human hearing, which bounces off objects and return to the bat's large sensitive ears in a stream of information about the precise shape, distance, and movement of everything in its immediate environment. This is called echolocation, and it is so precise and so rapid that a bat catching insects in total darkness is performing a feat of sensory processing that exceeds what any artificial system can currently replicate. The bat has no idea it is impressive. It comes back one more time, bangs over the fire, vanishes. You stretch in the chair. Your spine pops pleasantly in two places. Your shoulders roll back. You extend your legs and flex your feet and feel the gentle pull of the muscles down the back of your calves, the kind of pull that is the border of discomfort and which shifts immediately into comfort when you release it. The fire is all coals now. The last piece of wood has burned through completely, and there's no flame remaining, only the deep, pulsing red orange of the coals glowing steadily, responding to the small movements of the air with subtle shifts in brightness. It is hot in a way that fire is not hot, dense and directed and lasting. The heat comes from it in a steady wave rather than a flicker of a flame heat, and it is the best kind of warmth for sitting beside in the late part of the evening. You sit with it for a while longer. There's nothing you are trying to accomplish right now, nothing you are working out. You are not reviewing the day, not cataloging what went well or poorly, not constructing plans for tomorrow, not running over conversations. You are just here, just exactly here, in this chair, in this field, in this night. The stars overhead are at their most numerous now. You have lost count at some point long past. The sky, in every direction you look, is simply full of them, the bright ones and the faint ones, the ones that group into constellations so familiar you navigate by them without thinking, and the ones between them that have no common name. The ones so faint they appear and disappear depending on whether you look directly at them or slightly to one side. Because of the way the different type of light sensitive cells of the in the eye are distributed, with the most sensitive ones not quite at the center of your visual field. If you look at the faint star directly, it seems to vanish. If you look a little to the side of it, just past it, as though looking at something behind it, it reappears. Astronomers call this averted vision. It is a trick for seeing the things that the eye would otherwise miss. A reminder of what you perceive depends partly on how you look, not just how you look at. The coals breathe. The owl speaks once more, from closer than before. You don't look for it. You don't need to see it. It is enough to know it is there, conducting its own evening in the trees beyond the wall, having no idea you exist, going about the ancient business of being an owl in the dark, which is not so different from what you are doing, really. You are also conducting your own evening. You are also going about the business of being a human in the dark. You decide it is time to get into the tent, not because you are tired exactly, though you are, not because the evening is over, though it is moving in its deeper hours, but because the tent is warm and the sleeping bag is ready and waiting, and the sky will be still be there if you open the tent door and lie on your back with your head pointing that way. And you have learned that some of the best stargazing happens horizontal, when you are no longer holding your own weight and can simply lie there and receive. You stand. The whole world reorganizes itself around your standing body. The coals below and the right, the wall behind you, and the hillside rising to the north, and the dark stretching away. You take a moment with the fire, spreading the coals slightly with the stick that you've been using all evening, letting the air circulate through them to carry away the heat. And then you lay the flat piece of stone across them, not a large stone, not enough to smother them, just enough to slow them and protect the field from any spark the night wind might carry. You step away from the fire and look up, away from the glow of the coals. Your dark, adapted eyes adjust fully within a few seconds, and the sky overhead becomes even more elaborate, even more present than it was when you were sitting by the warmth. The Milky Way seems to pulse slightly, not really. That is your own circulatory system ticking in your vision. But you understand why people throughout history described it as a river, as a road, as a living thing. It has that quality of things that are both very still and very much in motion at once. You stand in the field for a minute, just a minute. The wet grass is cool against your boots. The air is cold now, properly cold, enough that each breath comes out as a slight mist, briefly visible by starlight. Your face is cold. Your hands in their pockets are warm. The stars are everywhere. You count the satellites. This has been something that people do in clear skies now. Count the satellites moving slowly throughout the field of stars, distinguishable by their steady, unblinking progress across the sky, their lack of flicker, their evenness. There are several visible tonight, one moving from west to east, catching the sunlight from beyond the earth's shadow, another, fainter, crossing at a diagonal. At a certain angle, two of them appear to be moving in a nearly the same direction, as though in a loose conversation with each other. You watch them until they have crossed the far side of the sky and become indistinguishable from the fixed stars. Into the tent, you remove your boots at the entrance. The small ritual, the threshold, the drawing of a line between the outside and the inside. Inside is ordered and warm and yours. You've made it yours in the way the campers do. The lantern on its hook, the bag arranged just so, and the things you will need in the night: water, head torch within reach of your hand. You undress to the degree that makes sleep comfortable without making it cold, keeping the base layer, removing the rest, all of it folded or unrolled. The low stakes of tidiness of someone doing it for themselves and no one else. Into the sleeping bag, zip it up. The material is cool against your face for a moment and then warms. You lie on your back. The tent ceiling above you is dark. The nylon, dark green, barely visible. But the tent door, you left it half open. The mesh inner closed against the night insects, but the fly pulled back to give it a view, frames a section of the sky. You see, you can see in that rectangle 20 or 30 stars at least, the edge of the Milky Way, just barely, a piece of hillside against the sky. This is enough. This rectangle of stars, this small managed window onto the vast outside, this is sufficient proportion to the infinite that to carry you into sleep. The sleeping bag is extraordinary. It has been with you long enough to have taken the shape of your preferences, to be, by now, so well understood by your body that getting into it is less like getting into a bag and more like returning into something that was waiting for you. The way the down redistributes around your shoulders when you shift, the way the hood changes just enough to leave your face in the air, your breath rising to the dimness above without letting the cold in around your neck. The sleeping mat beneath you is firm and even. You are not cold from below. The mat's insulation does its job, keeping the grounds cold from conducting up through the 20 odd centimeters of foam and air and beneath you and the soil. You are floating, in a functional sense, above the earth. Your body weight is distributed across your entire back. Your heels, calves, the back of your thighs, your lower back, your shoulder blades, the back of your skull, each region of your body in contact with the mat and pressing into it with its own small weight, nothing added, nothing clenched. This is a good position. You don't always sleep on your back. In ordinary life, in beds, in rooms with ceilings and artificial light and the low background hum of things plugged into the wall, you often end up on your side, curled slightly, arms folded. Not tonight. Tonight, the tent is wide enough and the bag is comfortable enough, and the body is relaxed enough that lying on your back is not an effort, but a natural arrangement of a thing that has been given the room and permission to lie flat. Your arms are at your sides, your palms face upward, slightly open, the fingers very slightly curled, neither gripping nor reaching, simply resting. The muscles of your hand are so relaxed that they feel barely present. Your fingers are just warmth and weight. Your palms are warmth and weight. The tent fabric makes the occasional small sound, a slight rustle, a very soft creak as the night breeze moves past outside. It is contained, a familiar sound, Not a sound of threat, but a sound of shelter. The tent doing its job, the wind being held back, the warmth inside being preserved. You breathe in, out, in, out. There's nothing in the breath tonight, nothing to process, nothing to analyze. The breath is just the breath, the body doing what it does when you stop overriding it, moving in its own rhythm, at its own pace, finding its level the way water finds its level without effort or intervention. The coals outside have almost certainly faded by now. The stone is over them. The fire is done for the night. Tomorrow morning there will be ash and a few unburned stubs of wood around the edges, and the stones of the ring will be cold. You will rebuild it in the morning, probably. Make tea over it. Sit with the mug in both hands while the hillside lightens and the mist burns off and the curlews start up again. But that is tomorrow. Tomorrow is a long way from here. Here is the tent and the bag and the small rectangle of stars in the open door and the sound of the wind in the heather and the weight of your body against the mat. Utterly still. Stars are made of gas. That is where it starts. And the simplicity of the beginning is deceptive. Because of the time you follow the chain of events to its conclusion, the result is something with no simplicity at all. The gas at the beginning is mostly hydrogen, very cold hydrogen, cold enough that it is not gas in an ordinary sense, meaning that it has no warmth and no pressure, just atoms drifting in the near absolute darkness of interstellar space, pulled very slightly in various directions by the gravity of nearby objects, accumulating infinitely slowly into loose clouds. The clouds drift, they collide occasionally, very slowly, the slow collision of things with no pressure behind them, gentle as the meeting of two smoke rings. And where they meet, the density is slightly higher, and where the density is higher, the gravity is slightly stronger, and the stronger gravity pulls more material. And more material increases the density, and the increased density increases the gravity, and the collapse begins. Once it begins, it accelerates. What was a cloud becomes a knot, and the knot becomes a spear. The spear contracts. As it contracts, the atoms at the core are pressed together, and the pressure generates heat. And heat means those atoms are moving faster, and fast moving atoms collide with force. And in the core of this collapsing sphere, which is becoming very dense, very hot, a temperature measured in millions of degrees, something happens. The hydrogen atoms are moving fast enough and pressed together densely enough that when they collide, they don't simply bounce, they fuse. The nucleus of a hydrogen atom is a single proton. When two protons collide at sufficient speed and pressure, they can fuse into a single nucleus, the nucleus of helium, releasing, in a fraction of a second of fusion, a tiny amount of energy, a tiny amount. But they are in the core of a star, so many protons and so many fusions happening every second that the tiny amounts add up to something almost impossible to hold in the mind. The sun, your sun, the one that set tonight over the hills to the west, the one that whose light still lingers in the western sky as a faint smudge, converts 4 million tons of mass into pure energy every second. This is fusion. This is what you are seeing when you look at a star, the light of fusion, the light of matter becoming energy. And that is only the simple part. Because the fusion of hydrogen makes helium, and when enough hydrogen is used up, the star, which has been balanced all its life between the inward pull of gravity and the outward pressure of fusion, begins to contract again, and the contraction heats the core further, and the helium begins to fuse. Helium fusing makes carbon and oxygen, and if the star is large enough, the carbon fuses, making neon, neon to magnesium, magnesium to silicon, silicon to iron. Iron is the end of the road. You cannot get energy from fusing iron. Iron sits at the bottom of the nuclear energy curve, the most stable nucleus, the one that neither fission or nor fusion will release energy from. When a massive star accumulates an iron core, the game is over. The balance that has held the star together for millions of years collapses in a fraction of a second. The core implodes. The outer layers, falling inward at a quarter of the speed of light, hits the collapsing core and bounce. The explosion is called a supernova. For a few days, one supernova can outshine an entire galaxy, while all 100 billion stars of it, by a factor of 10, the energy released in those few days is greater than the total energy of the sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year lifetime. And in that explosion, all the elements that the star has built up, the carbon, the oxygen, the neon, the silicon, and the iron, are flung outward into space. They drift, they become part of new clouds. The clouds collapse, new stars form, new planets built partly of the scattered remains of dead stars. The calcium in your bones was made in a star that died before the sun existed. The iron in your blood, that particular iron, the specific atoms of it, each one was synthesized in the core of a star so massive that it ended in a supernova. And the light that explosion may well have been visible from somewhere in the universe before the Earth existed. You are, in this very specific and literal sense, made of stars, not metaphorically, not a poetic sentiment. The atoms that make up your body were forged in stellar interiors across billions of years of cosmic time. The star that made the iron in your blood is gone. The explosion that scattered it across space happened long before any of your ancestors of yours drew a breath. And yet you are the iron circulating in your blood, keeping you alive, carrying oxygen to your brain so you can lie on a tent and think about this. The rectangle of stars in the tent is very still. You blink at them slowly. 20, 30, 100 points of light, each one a fusion furnace, each one spending itself making light, each one part of a long chain of events that made you lying here looking back at them. The night moves past its midpoint. You have not been asleep, or perhaps you have been for short stretches in that drifting way of camping sleep where the boundary between waking and sleeping is much softer than usual, where the small sounds of the outside world filter in and become part of whatever is happening behind your closed eyes without interrupting it. The owl called twice more while you were lying there, or once, perhaps more than twice. You cannot be certain, because at some point the interval between hearing and registering grew long enough that you may have simply not registered some of them. The stars, visible in the tent door, have moved. The sky rotates, appears to rotate, because the earth is rotating, and the surface of the earth, and the effect is the whole celestial sphere seems to turn overhead slowly, 24 hours for a complete rotation. And if you watched carefully for the past 3 hours, you would have seen the stars drift and the Milky Way arc and the whole vault of the sky shifting in its own ancient and reliable clockwork. The rectangle of the sky and the tent door now shows different stars than it did when you first lay down. The air inside the tent is warm. Your breath has warmed it over the hours. A few degrees, enough to make difference between cold and merely cool. Outside, the temperature has continued to drop. The coldest hour is usually just before dawn, which is still some time away, but you are insulated from it. You are in the warm, small whirl of the tent. You have not thought about much. This is worth nothing, not as an achievement. You haven't tried for it, you haven't made it a goal. It has simply been the way it happens when you've given the mind long enough to run something simple. The first hour, there was still plenty of ordinary life drifting through it, things you need to do, conversations you have had, small unresolved tensions of the day. But they came without urgency. They arrived, were noticed, and moved on. The way clouds move when there's no particular wind. By the time you got into the tent, there was little of that remaining. Now there's almost nothing. The mind is doing something closer to what it does in the very early hours of sleep, before the dreams have properly begun. Something loose and associative, following threads without purpose, letting images arise and dissolve without interpreting them. A hillside, water, the fire, a door opening, a voice that isn't anyone's voice, stars. These are not thoughts exactly. They're more like weather. You breathe in, out. The sleeping bag is warm. Your feet, which were slightly cool when you first got in, are thoroughly warm now. The bag has taken temperature of your body and held it back to you, and you feel it especially in your feet, which tends to be the last place to catch up. They are warm now. They are fine. Your hands are folded slightly on your chest, or one of them is. The other has found its way to your side and is lying there open, palm against the material of the bag, just resting. This is a position you do not choose deliberately. This is a position of the body finds when it no longer is being supervised. When the self that makes decisions and monitors posture and adjusts for comfort has stepped back far enough that the body can simply be. It does not need adjustment. It is comfortable. It has found what is needed without being asked. The header on the hillside makes it sound. It is not a loud sound. It never is. It is more a presence than a sound, the aggregate of a million individual stems and seed heads and dry flower clusters in the wind, each one making a sound too small to register alone, but together making something you can feel in the same way you feel the warmth of the coals rather than hearing it. A sound that is also a sensation. The hillside breathes, you breathe. The breathing is the same. There is an hour in the night. usually somewhere between 1 and 3 in the morning when the birds stop entirely. The tawny owl goes quiet. Whatever the small birds were stirring in the hedge have settled fully. The distant crow is long since absent. Even the occasional brief trilling of something in the grass, a cricket perhaps, or something like a cricket, has ceased. This is the deepest hour. If you are awake for it, and you are barely in the floating way, you feel it as different quality of silence, not emptier exactly, more settled. The way a house feels in the morning night compared to midnight. The same house, the same rooms, but somehow more fully itself, having given up all its daytime pretenses. The wind, too, has dropped slightly, not gone entirely, but quieter, a very faint movement of the air rather than a direction and a force. The heather barely stirs. The tent fabric is almost completely still. In this deep silence, you can hear things you couldn't hear earlier. Your own heartbeat, very faintly, the small sounds of your own breathing, not loud, just present. The slight sound of air moving through the complex passages of your body. The river. Somewhere below and to the south, the river is still moving. In this profound quiet, you can just hear it, the faintest low sound. Not really a sound, more of a suggestion of one. The sense of water in motion carried a mile or more by this very still air. And something else, something that is not a sound so much as the quality of the dark. The dark at this hour is different from the dark at earlier hours. It has more texture, more depth, as though the darkness itself is a substance rather than an absence. The stars outside the tent are extraordinarily steady, not twinkling now. The air is settled, the atmosphere is calm, and the stars are steady as pins in fabric. This is a real phenomenon. Twinkling, scintillation, is caused by the light of a star passing through turbulent layers of atmosphere. When the atmosphere is calm and cold and still, as it becomes the deepest hours of the clear night, the twinkling diminishes and the star appears as they actually are, fixed, precise, infinitely small and infinitely distant, each one perfectly itself. You look at the steady stars. The word that comes is not any of the words that you might expect. Not peaceful, not beautiful, not awe. Those are correct words and they are all present somewhere in the feeling. But the word that arrives is something simpler. Good. It is good. This night, this hillside, this particular collection of circumstances that has brought you here to this field, to this tent, to this hour is it is good, not perfect, not without the small complication that is nothing is without, but good in the deep sense, the sense that includes everything and it finds it sufficient, the sense that says, this is the world, you are in it. Both of these things are remarkable. The stars are steady. You close your eyes. The edges of things are softening now. The tent walls, which were a fabric surface with texture and seams, are becoming simply dark. The sleeping bag, which was warmth and weight and a specific feel, is becoming simply warmth. Your body, which was arms and legs and the back and the neck, is becoming simply presence, weight, temperature, breath. This is the threshold. You have been near it before. In the last few minutes before sleep, when the mind slows to its most basic functions, Not taught exactly, but a looseness, a willingness, a state of just prior to receiving whatever comes in the night's first hours. Images arrive without narrative. The fire, seen from above, not a real view. You couldn't see it from above, but the way the mind holds things. A circle of orange in a dark field, the sparks going up, water, very dark, very still, with stars reflected in it. The stone wall in the daylight, each stone fitted to the next, the whole thing gray and certain. A sound like wind through trees, though there were no trees immediately near. The sound of trees somewhere, carried here by memory or by dream. The beginning of something that has no story yet. Your breath has slowed. You are not counting it. You are not watching it. It is simply happening as it has been happening your whole life. The long, slow exchange, the body taking what it needs to releasing what it doesn't, without direction, without your involvement, just the ancient chemistry of living. The heather on the hillside, the river somewhere below, the stars steady through the open door of the tent, warm, still, quiet. The hillside knows nothing of time. The heather that has been here long enough that the distinction between this hour and the any other hour barely registers. The roots of the oldest heather plants goes down several feet into the peat and a thin moorland soil, a slow, patient growth, a few centimeters per year in good conditions, building over decades and then centuries, a root system so dense and interlinked that the moorland is in some ways a single organism connected underground. The soil beneath the tent has its own life. In a handful of healthy soil, there are more living organisms than there are people on earth. Bacteria, fungi, nematode worms, springtails, mites, all of them going about their business in the dark, decomposing, building, exchanging nutrients, communicating through the chemical language of the underground. A language so different from any language you know that makes all human languages look like slight variations on a theme. The fungal networks run through everything. Beneath your tent, beneath the field, threading through the roots of the heather and the grass and the occasional small tree, a birch sapling at the edge of the field, wind swept into a permanent lean, there are fungal hypae so fine that a single teaspoon of soil might contain enough of them laid end to end to stretch for miles. They connect plant to plant, transferring phosphorus and nitrogen and water, passing carbon compounds from tree to grass, from grass to heather, an exchange of resources so sophisticated that we describe it, we almost inevitably reach for the same word, network. The word we reach for most often lately is internet, which is not quite right because the internet was designed and this was not. This evolved over 400 million years from the first plants that colonized land, which brought their fungal partners with them, to the hillside which you are sleeping on tonight, where every organism in the soil is related to and connected with every other through a web of exchange that had been running longer than your species had existed. And none of it requires your attention. All of this is happening right now, beneath you, without reference to you. The soil is alive and the roots are growing and the hypae are exchanging. And the darkness is full of the small lives of things that need nothing from you and ask nothing of you and are simply completely themselves. Warm, dark, breathing, a sound from somewhere on the hillside. You don't open your eyes for it, you register it. A brief, soft sound, a movement, a creature in the heather, a rabbit or a hare, most likely, or a deer picking its way along the upper edge of the field in the dark, pausing, continuing. They move all night, the deer on these hills, not purposely, but with the easy purpose of animals that are not tracking a schedule. They are simply moving from one thing to the next as the next thing presents itself, as the night air moves and the smell of something interesting comes from over there, and the grass is good here, and the water is in that direction. The sound settles. Whatever made it has moved on or stilled. This is the kind of sound that at other times and in other places might register as something alarming, a sound in the dark at an hour when most people are asleep. But here, in this context, with the hillside around you and the stars overhead and your body warm in the sleeping bag, it only registers only as company. There are other lives here. They're going about their evenings. You are also going about yours. The boundary between inside and outside is thin here, not the physical boundary. The tent is doing its job. The fly is up. You are dry and warm. But the experiential boundary, the sense of separation from the outside world, the sense of being in an interior and the world being somewhere else. This is thin here, thinner than it is in a building, thinner than it is behind walls and glass and thickness of insulation. You can feel the hillside, not the sensation exactly. You are not cold or not wet, but through proximity, the knowledge that there is only a few millimeters of nylon between you and the open air, that if you reach your hand out of the tent door and laid it on the grass, you would feel the dew, that the stars are not behind a ceiling and a roof, but directly above, separated from your body only by the tent fabric and a meter of air. You are a warm living thing lying on the surface of a planet in the middle of a clear night. That is the simplest description of what is happening. It is also, if you hold it for a moment, a remarkable description. Warm, still. The mind at the edge of sleep does not narrate. It shows the camp chair empty, lit by the last of the coals, a stone wall seen in sunlight long ago, water, the particular smell of wood smoke on cold air, sky above the field, stars. The sound of the wind in the heather is very faint now, or perhaps it has been faint all along and you are now only hearing it as such, no longer as a sound to be interpreted, but to be identified, to be understood, but simply as a texture of the air, a quality of the night, the wind in the heather, the river below, your own slow breath. These are not separate things. They are the same thing. The night breathing, you're part of the breathing. Your chest rises, falls. The stars hold. The darkness holds. The ground beneath you, solid and patient, holds. If you know where to look, the sky is organized. It has been organized for as long as people have looked at it, divided, named, mapped, memorized, argued about. Different cultures drew different shapes across the same stars, invented different stories to explain why those shapes were there, used them to navigate, to plan, to predict the seasons. The Pleiades told one civilization when to plant and when to harvest. Orion rose at certain times of year, and its rising told sailors something they needed to know. Polaris sit almost exactly above the Earth's north pole and therefore appears night after night to be one of the most fixed point around which everything else rotates. And navigators for centuries used this fact to find north when they had nothing else. We have, for practical purposes, stopped navigating by stars. Most people today could not tell you which direction north is by looking at the sky. Most people have never needed to. The instruments that replace the stars are so reliable, so ubiquitous, so embedded in the devices we carry everywhere that the knowledge has simply ceased to be transmitted. Not lost exactly, it is still in books, still taught in certain courses, still known by sailors and scouts and small community of people for whom it matters. But for most of us, the navigational information in the sky is now effectively decorative. And yet, there's something that persists, something that happens when you look at the night sky that has nothing to do with navigation or planting calendars or any other practical use, a recognition, a response, something older than any particular use we have put the stars to, something present before any of the stories were told. Whatever it is, it runs deep, deep enough that people in full artificial environments, working in the continuous artificial light of an office building, sleeping in the continuous artificial dark of blackout blinds, will, when they go outside at night, stop and look up. Even people who have no vocabulary for what they are seeing, even people who have no particular interest in astronomy or navigation or mythology, they stop, they look. The stars do something to them. You're doing it right now, or you were before you came inside. And even inside, with your eyes closed, an image still present, the whole vault of the sky as it appeared when you stepped out of the tent and looked up in the deep hours, the Milky Way fully resolved, the stars steady, the whole enormous thing arranged overhead in its ancient and indifferent beauty, the constellation directly overhead. This time of year, at this hour of night, is one of the most people in the northern hemisphere can find without instruction. The shape of a great cross or a large kite, its longer arm pointing north and south, its shorter arm east and west. Cygnus, the swan, though the swan's body is somewhat abstract, requiring a generous imagination. The way all constellations require generous imagination if you're trying to find a swan in four stars and a crossbar. The brightest star at the tail end of the swan or the head of the cross, depending on your frame of reference, is Deneb. It is one of the most luminous stars visible to the naked eye, which means its modest brightness relative to Sirius or Vega is entirely a function of its distance. Deneb is approximately 2,000 light years away. The light arriving at your eye right now left the star 2,000 years ago, during the time of the Roman Empire, and has been traveling ever since toward this moment, toward this hillside, toward this open tent door. 2,000 years of travel, and it arrives as a small, quiet point of light that most people glance over without recognizing. There's something you cannot help feeling about this. Not a sadness. The light doesn't didn't suffer, didn't choose, didn't experience the journey, but something, a kind of attention paid to the unnoticed, a recognition that significance does not require recognition, that light traveled 2,000 years and you noticed it, and it is something. even if you did not remember it by tomorrow morning. To the south of Cygnus, further down the Milky Way's band, is the constellation Aquila, the eagle, whose brightest star is Altair, much closer than Deneb, only 17 light years away. Altair is one of the fastest rotating stars visible to the naked eye. It completes one rotation on its axis every 9 hours, compared to the sun's 25 days. This rotation had deformed it slightly. The centrifugal force of its spinning has pushed its equator outward, making it noticeably oblate, flattened at the poles, bulging at the middle. You could see it as a disk rather than a point. It would not be round. Stars are stranger than they appear from here. They are not simple burning spheres that the word star might suggest. They are objects of extreme complexity, dynamic, variable, in constant internal motion. Their surfaces roiling with convection currents larger enough to swallow the earth whole, their interior subject to pressures and temperatures that we can calculate but cannot reproduce, their interactions with each other filling the galaxy with radiation and particles and outflowing gas. And yet, from here, from a tent on a hillside, looking up through a rectangle of open fly, they are just light, just very precise, very steady, very distant light, arranged in patterns that feel meaningful even when you don't know their names. That is not a failure of imagination. That is the right response to a sky like this, just to see the light, to let the complexity rest, to be here in this field under this sky and let the stars be stars overhead, steady, very still. When you drive away from this place tomorrow, something will remain, not in any mystical sense. The field will not remember you. The hillside will not mark your presence. The grass will spring back where you walked. The fire's ring stones will be rearranged the next time someone makes a fire here. The pecks will have left small holes in the turf and the roots will grow back to fill within a week or two. Physically, you will leave almost no trace, but something will remain in you. You carry every night you have ever slept outside, not as a record, not catalogued, but as a quality, a knowledge in the body that it is different from intellectual knowledge. The body knows how to be here. It has been taught by all the previous times, however many the number, and it carries that knowledge, that the way it carries the knowledge of how to balance, how to read a face, how to find your way back to have been only once. Below the level of language and the level of memory, the body knows. The night will become part of that. The particular quality of the cold at the edge of the sleeping bag where the zip is slightly loose, the color of the coals when they are at their deepest and longest burning, that particular dark orange that is almost red, the sound of the oil in the long pause between its calls, the exact weight of the sleeping bag across your chest. These things will not be filed away as memories that you can retrieve on demand in order clearly dated. They will become part of the fabric of what you know sleeping outside to feel like. They will make the next time when it comes feel like returning to something already known, already loved. This is how places become places you love, not by one great dramatic visit that impresses itself on you, but by accumulation, by the slow layering of small specific things. This particular smell, this particular angle of light, this particular quality of the dark, until the place has a presence in you that is distinct and irreplaceable. You can love a place the way you love a person, in this sense, not because it has qualities that you could list and tick off, but because of what it does to you when you are in it, the way it arranges you, the specific way it invites you to be. The hillside invites you to be quiet, not the enforced quiet of a library or a church, not a quiet imposed from outside by rules or decorum, the quiet that comes from being somewhere outside that is itself quiet, deeply and genuinely quiet, where the noise that would normally fill the air is simply absence, and the absence is not felt as a lack, but as a presence, the presence of what it is to actually hear. Heather and stone and cold air and stars, the river below going where it goes, the owl in the trees, you lying warm in the tent, breathing slowly. This is what is here. This is what it is here. It is the word again, the only word that keeps arriving, enough, more than enough. The coals have gone completely cold by now, or very nearly. The stone lies over them. Tomorrow morning there will be ash and a few small red brown stubs, and you will rebuild the fire gently with care, using the small sticks first and the first birch bark, and you will sit with a mug of tea in both hands and watch the light come over the eastern hills. But this is morning. This is a different story. This story is the night, and the night is not finished, and you are still in it, and it is holding you the way the ground holds you, firmly, without drama, without asking anything of you. The stars are still overhead, the sky is still turning, the dark is still warm. There's nothing at all to do but rest. Most people in the modern world never experience true darkness. They experience dimness, the dimness of a room night, with street light coming through curtains, the dimness of a corridor with an exit sign glowing green, the dimness of a phone screen turned face down on a table, still faintly lit by notifications. Even in the darkest domestic interior, there is almost always something, some small persistent source of light that keeps the eye from ever fully adapting. True darkness is different. Full dark adaptation takes about 40 minutes. The process is chemical. Rhodopsin, the pigment in the eye's rod cells that is sensitive to very low levels of light, bleaches out in bright conditions and takes time to regenerate. In the first few minutes of darkness, you see almost nothing. After 10 minutes, shapes begin to appear. After 20, you can navigate. After 40, the sky overhead on a clear night is full of stars, and you can make out the hillside and the stone wall and the shape of your tent without any additional light source. Your eyes are fully dark adapted now, or they were when your eyes were open. They are closed now. The adaptation is present but not in use, ready, waiting, available. If you were to open your eyes and look out the tent door, you would see the stars clearly, the hillside, the field, but you do not open your eyes. The darkness behind your closed eyelid is warm. It is not the absence of something, but the presence of something else. Rest, depth, and the quietness of the visual system taking a break from its constant work of constructing a world from the information your eyes provide. The visual cortex does not simply go dark when the eyes close. It continues to be active, processing, but processing inward, memory, imagination, the building of images that will become dreams. What is this building now is gentle, a hillside, a fire, much earlier, smaller now, the sky, very large, a stone wall in the distance, stars, always stars, returning to stars. There will become a moment some hours from now when the sky in the east begins to change. Not a light, not yet. First, a change in quality. The deepest black beginning to relent slightly. The stars near the eastern horizon becoming marginally less distinct against a background that is no longer quite as dark. It takes a long time. If you were watching, you might not be certain it was happening for another half hour after it started. The eye and the mind are both reluctant to let go of the night. Then color begins, very faint, right at the horizon. Not orange, not yet, something colder, more blue, the pre dawn glow, the light of the sky scattering before the sun has risen, the first suggestion of the day. The birds respond to this. There's usually one bird first, a single voice in what has been complete silence, the first note of what will become the dawn chorus. It is always slightly startling, that first bird, even when you were expecting it, even when you've heard it before. Something about this transition from profound silence to even one voice feels sudden, feels momentous, feels like the world deciding to begin. Then another voice, then several. Within 20 minutes of the first bird, the dawn chorus is building. Dozens of individual voices, each one staking out territory, announcing presence, asserting the specificity of the particular song. The whole thing a dense and layered thing that sounds chaotic, but is, when you listen to it, highly organized. Each species has its hour. Each bird has its position in the chorus, its place in the morning's unfolding. The light grows, the stars fade, not all at once. The brightest stars hold longest, Vega perhaps, or Jupiter if it's in a good position, visible still in a sky that has turned from black to deep blue to a pale luminous gray. Then they too dissolve, not going out, but simply becoming invisible against the brightening background. Still there, still shining, still making their light across the light years, just temporarily outcompeted by something closer. The sun is coming. The hills to the east turn gold along their tops. The dew on the grass is very bright now, each blade tipped with a droplet that catches the first horizontal light and holds it. The field is full of brief light, the whole surface of it glittering in a way that lasts only for a few minutes, only in this particular angle of light, only at this particular hour. If you have seen this, you do not forget it. The air smells of morning, cool, clean, with the particular mineral freshness that comes with dawn. The night's accumulated cold dissipating, the moisture evaporating, the day's beginning its long work of warming everything up. The curlew calls, but this is later. This is hours away. This is morning. Right now, it is still night. Right now, the stars are still steady in the sky. Right now, the hillside is dark and quiet and patient, and the tent is warm, and you are exactly where you need to be. The breath in, out, the warmth, the dark, the sound of the wind. Very far now, or very near, it is the same thing. The ground beneath you is still, the sky above you is full. You are between the two. Nothing is required of you, nothing at all. The stars are holding their positions in the cold. They have been holding them since there was anyone to look. They will hold them long after. Tonight they are holding them for you. The hillside settles, the heather is dark, the wall is dark, the field is dark, the tent is dark. You are warm, you are here, you are safe. The night continues its slow turn. The stars move so gradually you cannot see it. Only the sleeping world knows they have moved at all. Breathe in, out. The owl is quiet. The river is somewhere below. The heather is very still. The dark is warm. Sleep. This hillside has looked different in every month that has ever passed over it. In January, it would be dusted with snow on higher ground. Not always, not every year, but in the years when the cold comes properly, when the temperature drops below freezing and stays there long enough, the heather turns top white, and the field is hard, and the stone wall is furred with frost on its shaded side. The air is so cold at night in January that the moisture in your breath freezes the moment it leaves your mouth, hanging for a second as a small cloud before dispersing. The stars in January are different stars. The great winter constellations, Orion, the Hunter, the only constellation that looks enough like what it is supposed to be immediately convincing, rides high in the south. Betelgeuse at his shoulder, distinctly orange red, one of the largest stars visible to the naked eye. A star so large that if it replaced the sun at the center of our solar system, it would extend beyond the orbit of Jupiter. Regal at his knee, blue, white, and intensely bright. The three stars of his belt in a perfectly straight diagonal line, pointing down and to the left towards Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, gleaming low on the horizon like a warning or a welcome. The winter sky has a particular clarity that summer does not. The cold drives out the water vapor, and without water vapor, the atmosphere is more transparent. Though a more transparent atmosphere, the stars are sharper, steadier, their colors more distinct. You can tell in winter which stars are blue white and which are yellow white and which are orange red in a way that it is harder in the humid summer air. The sky in January is like a perfectly clean window, and through it, the universe is as precise as a diagram. By March, the curlews return. They have spent the winter in the estuaries and the coastal marshes, probing the mud with those extraordinary bills, eating invertebrates from the soft intertidal zones. But in March, the hormonal changes of lengthening of days begin their work, and the birds respond, and they make the journey back to the uplands moors to breed. The first curlew call of the year over a hillside like this is one of the most affecting sounds in the natural world. The sound of something returning, the sound of a promise kept, the sound of a place some becoming fully itself after the long absence. April brings the weed eaters, small, bold birds bouncing on the stone walls, flashing on the white rump that gives them their name, having just arrived from sub Saharan Africa in a migration so extraordinarily in proportion, a bird the size of your fist, crossing the Sahara and the Mediterranean and the length of Europe, that it strains credibility. They are here for a season. They'll be gone by September. The heather flowers in July and August, and the hillside turns a color that is not quite purple and not quite pink and not quite red, but all three simultaneously and none of them, a color that painters have been trying to capture for centuries without ever getting it right. Probably because it is not really a single color, but a quality of the whole thing. The way a density of the plant and the angle of light combine to produce something that is different for every hour of the day and in every weather condition. In August, the evenings are warm and the light stays late, and the smell of the heather in flower is something that once you have experienced it, attaches itself permanently to the idea of summer, resinous and sweet and slightly medicinal. The smell of hundreds of thousands of tiny flower trumpets opening all at once, offering their pollen to the bees that descend on the hillside in the flowering weeks in the numbers you can hear from 50 meters away. Autumn comes slowly to this hillside. The heather goes brown. The bracken on the slower slopes turns gold and then rust, then a deep sodden brown that stays through the winter like old paper. The grasses lean, the days shorten, the curlews leave, the swallows leave, the hillside settles back into the winter itself, leaner, quieter, more spare, but not empty. The wall is still there, the rock is still there, the sky is still enormous. The sky is the constant. Whatever is happening on the hillside, whatever season, whatever weather, whatever year, the sky is always overhead. Always, when the clouds part, full of the same stars that were there before the header, before the walls, before the people who built the wall, before the language we describe them in. The sky is older than everything here, and younger too, in a way, if you think of light as the thing the sky is made of, and if you think about all the light that has been before it arrives here, that the sky you are seeing is not a fixed thing at all, but a collection of moments from different times, each star's light having left at a different date, all of it arriving simultaneously, so that the sky is simultaneously the past and the present, a single image composed of light from a thousand different years. You lie in the tent. Above you, all the years arriving at once. Below you, the long patient history of the hillside. Between them, the single night, the single hour, your warm body and your slow breath, the midpoint, the present moment, which is, as always, the only present moment there is. Stars, many, the body, heavy, good, the breath, the ground, the sky, the turning, the warmth, here, here, dark, warm, still, good, sleep. Let the hillside hold you now. Let the ground hold you. You have been here all evening. You built the fire and ate the food and watched the sky and listened to the owl and laid down under the stars and let the dark come in around the tent and the night move past its deepest point. You have been very quiet. That is enough. That is more than enough. That is, in fact, everything. The morning will come with its bird and its dew and its slow orange light over the eastern hills. You will make tea and warm your hands around the mug and watch the mist lift off the heather. But not yet, not for a long time. For now, the stars are still here and the dark is still warm and the field is quiet and you are exactly where you are, which is enough, which is exactly enough. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. The stars will be here when you wake. The hillside will be here. Everything will be here. Rest.